Welcome to Blueprint Boost for Contractors, the podcast that's your go-to source for unlocking the secrets to successful marketing, gaining valuable insights, and growing your contracting business with less stress. Your host is David Brooks, and he's thrilled to be your guide on this journey. As a seasoned expert in the contracting industry, David understands the challenges you face. That's why each episode is crafted to provide you with actionable strategies and proven blueprints to boost your business to new heights.
Hello, everyone. We'd like to welcome you to the latest episode of the podcast. I'm your host, David Brooks, with Contractor Rhino. And we have a special guest today, and I'll allow him to introduce himself.
Well, how's it going, David? This is Brigham with Power Selling Pros. We're a company that trains CSRs one-on-one twice a month using their own phone calls. I've been doing it for more than 15 years now. And we specialize in the home services industry, the residential home services industry. So if you're in plumbing, heating, cooling, electrical, roofing, anything that has to do with a home, we are serving those customers, listening to their phone calls, providing coaching on a regular basis.
Excellent. So,
yeah,
glad to have you on. Can you just give us a little bit about your journey?
Sure. So, about 2008, actually, let's go back to 2007. In 2007, I was shoveling my walk. And in Utah, about 4 months out of the year, you're shoveling your walk. Lots of snow, greatest snow on earth, they say. And my neighbor was a mortgage broker, and he said, while he was shoveling his walk and I was shoveling my walk, we're kind of working our way towards one another on the sidewalk out on the front of our homes, right? And he said, "So, how much do you know about the mortgage industry?" And I said, not much at all. I mean, I've got a mortgage. What are you talking about? And he said, "Well, things are going down and you should buckle up." And I was like, "What do you mean buckle up?" And he's like, "Well, if the home industry goes down, then it's going to hurt. It's going to hurt a lot of pocketbooks, and you've got to be ready." Now, at that very time, I was thinking about merging my company in with another company in the industry that basically could do a heat load calculation in 4 minutes or less. Now, I didn't check to see if it was accurate, and I probably should have. But the fact of the matter is that I was really excited about this merger. I thought it was going to go gangbusters. I thought I was going to change the industry. At the time, I had a marketing company that served the industry, and this is back before digital hit. Right, digital was. I'd say SEO and pay-per-click began to become a major player in marketing around, say, 2009, 2010, at least for our industry. We're usually a little bit behind everybody else, right? The auto industry does it. We do it 10 years later, which makes sense. But in 2007, this gentleman said that things were going south, and I didn't want to believe it because I was about to sign the deal on this merger. So I was doing marketing, and they were doing technology, basically manual J technology. And so we merged. I moved my family over to Florida, and within 5 months, the whole thing went to crap. Right, it went kaput, and I don't know if it had much to do with the 2008 home crash. I think it was more to do with it was just a bad idea. It was a bad idea. It didn't work. It was the first time in my life where, aside from my adolescence, I grew up in a trailer park and was always fearful of being without money, being poor. And so when it hit for me, 4 kids and a wife, it was extremely traumatic. It was one thing I didn't want my kids to go through. I went through it when I was a kid, and I didn't want them to go through it. And so I went through that. We were to the point where we were paying our employees and not ourselves. And after 5 months of that, we just couldn't do it anymore. There's nothing left. And so I remember one of the last days I went to work there in Lakeland, Florida. I was driving to the office, and before I could pull into the office, I just decided to keep on driving. So I just found myself in a very short period of time. I found myself at the edge of the city, there in Lakeland, and there's a Barnes and Noble there. So I stopped at this Barnes and Noble and went to the self-help because I needed help self-help section, and saw a book written by Jeff Gitomer called Yes Attitude. And I bought the CD as well as the book on credit card because that's all I had was credit. And for those of you who are under the age of 30, a CD is something you used to put in your car. That's how you listen to music. It was great fun. And I know that those who are under the age of 30 are like, oh, please give me a break. But Jeff was very hokey, super hokey in this book. And about a minute in, I pause it and then turn it back on. I listened to it for about another 30 seconds, but I was in such a negative state that I just couldn't handle it anymore. And so it was just turn it on, turn it off, turn it on, turn it off. And then finally, Jeff Gitomer pipes up in his book, and he says, and if you think this is hokey, go ahead and give this to somebody else. Watch them get rich and happy. And I was like, I'm not gonna let that happen. So I continued to listen. That was all I needed to hear. And it was that, and it's interesting how you either in adversity, you either turn to drinking or you turn to God. And I certainly turned to God. And I was consuming as much spiritual fulfillment as I was self-help fulfillment in recreating myself in a business. And I ended up metaphorically crawling back to Utah. My family stayed in Florida for a few weeks with a family there, a very nice couple that was helping us out. And I was coming back to Utah to figure out, okay, where we're going to live, what are we going to do, so on and so forth, right? And I ended up sleeping in a cot in my brother-in-law's basement. And there was a card table right next to that cot. And I woke up one morning, I looked around, and I just thought, dude, this is where I'm at. This is really where I'm at. And I started looking at all the things I was studying, both spiritual and business oriented and self-help. And I drew the first version of this. Now, this here is the Pattern for Excellence. This is a foundation set of principles that we teach at Parsley and Pros. Now, back then, I didn't know what the heck it was going to be. I just drew it out, and I thought to myself, dude, this is it. This is how I can connect with people on an emotional level, give them hope, some compassion, and create effective change in their lives. And I felt like as I helped them, that they in turn would help me. And so what I started doing is I had some contacts there, some heating and cooling companies that I used to work with in the past. And there's a couple of digital ad agencies that were beginning to do SEO and pay-per-click. It was all the rage back then. It was a really cool alternative to newspaper, direct mail, radio, billboards, right? It was something new, something different, a new way to make the phone ring. And I was excited about it, but there wasn't an ad agency that could afford me back then. They said, look, we'll pay you for clients, but that's about it. So I became a subcontractor. And I had one client, Troy Nearing's Plumbing and Heating, who was doing some advertising with me. And within about 2 weeks of him doing the advertising, he said, Brigham, we're getting leads, but they're not great leads. And I'm like, what are you talking about? They're not great leads. A lead's a lead, right? They can fog a mirror. It's a lead. And he said, well, they really just want a ballpark price over the phone. They just want to know what we charge to come out. They just want to talk to a technician. And I'm going, Troy, those are opportunities. Those are leads. Now, of course, I didn't want to get fired, right? This is my only source of income. And so he said, well, what do you have in mind? I said, and I showed him the thing that I drew. And I said, you need to teach your team this. And if you can imagine the first version of this, it was all in pencil, and some things were scribbled out. Don't know why I didn't use an eraser, stuff like that. And he's looking at it and going, all right, well, this is better than anything else. And I said, look, Troy, these guys aren't calling for their health. They're not calling to find out all the things you do not do. They're calling because they either don't want to do it or they don't know how. Now they're trying to short step the process by saying, how much is it, right? What do you charge? Can I just talk to a technician? Can I just get a ballpark price, right? Chances are they've called a few other companies and they're not seeing the difference between you and the next guy aside from your price. So whose job is it to show them there's a difference? Well, it's the CSR. Okay, well, let's train that CSR on this instead of firing me. How does that sound, Troy? Of course, I'm trying to save my hide here. And Troy said, all right, let's do it. Let's try it. And I start training his team. And within a month, I get a call from his buddy, Tom Robichaud in Boulder, Colorado, Precision Plumbing and Heating. And Tom says, hey, I hear you're working with Troy and his CSRs. And I said, yep, I'm working with the CSRs. And I'm also doing his advertising. He says, well, that's great, but I want you to train my CSRs. And I said, okay, it sounds good, but I need to do your advertising as well. And he's like, well, no, I've got my advertising covered, but I'll pay you to train my CSRs. And of course, the light bulb came up over my head. Oh, I could get paid to train CSRs. So I started training his CSRs. In fact, I can remember getting off the flight in Denver, getting into a rental car, driving over to Boulder. And I got a call from a colleague. And this colleague in the middle of our conversation said, how long are you going to go without a paycheck? And I just kind of mulled over that question for a second. And I said, as long as it takes. And he's like, well, what do you mean as long as it takes? I said, well, I know it's going to work. I know this is going to work. I just need to stick to it. I need to stay at it until it does. And sure enough, after working with Tom for a few months and Troy, their call conversions went up. They were all really excited because they weren't getting as many calls as they used to. Kind of like what the industry is doing right now. The industry is about 20% down on calls across the board, across the entire United States. And those who are calling in just want a ballpark price. They just want to know what you charge to come out. Just want to talk to a technician. And funny thing, Power Selling Pros is doing incredibly well. And the reason why we're doing incredibly well is because everybody wants to make sure that the calls that are coming in are being booked, the customers being wowed, and they're not calling anybody else. Well, the way that you make that happen is you provide an amazing experience, a wow experience over the phone. So Tom and Troy got together and they said, hey, let's get you in touch, Brigham, with Mike Agugliero, the owner of Gold Medal in East Brunswick, New Jersey. He was the founder of CEO Warrior. And so once we started working with Mike, within a few months, he had referred us to many different heating and cooling companies. And look, I was hiring all my friends, and I don't have a lot of friends. They're all working with me. They're paid friends now, which makes sense. and we went from training 6 CSRs at Nearings Plumbing and Heating in Utah to well over 1,000 CSRs today. And we take them through a certification process. There's 4 levels of certification. It takes about 1.5 years to complete. It's a bit of a university, but by the time we're done, they're booking calls, they're wowing customers, they're making sure that your technicians are the only ones going out to the home, and they're also selling service agreements, and they've got control over their own income. All right, they're self-reliant, and they're staying in their seat longer. As a CSR, they're staying there in that role for longer periods of time because they have control of their own income, because they're learning this skill set. And so, that's Power Selling Pros. That's how we came to be.
Nice. And that's an excellent journey of self-reflection and really being in a situation where you were going through some things personally, and you were trying to turn things around, and you just the light bulb click, and you bet on yourself, right? You kept going, you kept persevering, you kept pushing through to what it is today. And I think that that's sometimes the evolution of not every business owner, but a lot of business owners.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, look, it's increasingly I don't know why. It's increasingly a bad idea to bring in God into a conversation, right? And quite frankly, if I didn't, I feel like I'd be doing a disservice to what really happened, to what really occurred. So for me, it was such an important part of the journey that I can't not share it. You know what I mean? I don't know how uncomfortable you want to get, but I'll tell you one more story during that process. And I don't tell many people about this, but my father-in-law offered me money when the business went under in Florida. And the first thing I remembered was when I was asking his daughter's hand in marriage, right? It was very traditional. He asked me, well, how are you going to provide? Because I was this college kid barely getting through school, right? And I was like, hey, I'm going to marry your daughter. It's going to be great. She's going to be in great hands, right? And of course, he was like, okay, how are you going to provide for her, Brigham? You don't even have a job. You're getting yourself through school. What, is this a good time? Should you wait? Is basically what he said. And I said, I've got her. That's one thing you're never going to have to worry about. So 10 years later, when he's saying, hey, Brigham, I know you need some money. How much do you need? I'll write you a check. You can imagine how I felt at that moment. I was devastated. And I graciously declined, even though I had no idea where the money was going to come from. How was it going to keep food on the table? How was it going to keep roof over? I had no idea. And I can remember getting off the phone with him, practically throwing my phone to the ground, and my knees couldn't even carry my weight. And so I dropped to my knees and cried like I've never cried before, ever, that I can remember. I remember at one point while I was crying, I've got 2 daughters and 2 sons. And my daughter, Faye, at the time, she was probably 10. She heard me crying. She walked into my room and she asked me why I was crying. And the 2 of us, she knelt down and she prayed with me. It was an amazing moment. It was an incredible moment. 2 weeks after that experience, I can remember running in the neighborhood there in Lakeland, California. And as I was running, I was just thinking about that moment, how surreal it was, how desperate I was. And in that moment, as I was running, I could see in my mind's eye the arms of God putting his arms around me. And when I felt so alone, I realized in that moment while I was running that I had never been closer. And if you can imagine a guy running down the street with tears coming down his eyes, you're wondering what the freak's wrong with that guy. That's what was going on. That's what was going on. And it's the obstacles in our lives that and the failures and how we respond to those failures that make us who we are. And so when you're in the midst of a trial, when you're in the midst of difficulty, you can choose to be better for it. You can choose to let that make you a better person. And it certainly did make me a better person.
And that's amazing in the sense of it allowed you to be able to become a better person, made you a better person. Your daughter was able to come in and sit beside you. And that's a touching moment in itself because we all have, we have families, we have genuine compassion and love for our families. And we do the best that we can do to be able to care and provide for them. And like you said, you made that statement to your father-in-law, and then you're reflecting back and you're like, man, I said this 10 years ago and I really don't want to be in this situation, right? But you persevere, you had faith, and you were able to get through and come out on the other side. So that's in itself is commendable and encouraging to anyone going through circumstances, struggle situation is don't give up, don't hang your head low, take one day at a time and keep persevering.
Yeah. Micah Gugliero, awesome guy. When I first went out to New York, I lived in Utah. He was never signed up before I went out to New York. And I didn't tell my wife that he wasn't signed up, that I was going essentially taking a risk. And I had no money back then. And so I booked this flight. It was essentially about $1,000 for that and the hotel, right? The flight, the hotel, and the food. And I realized as I was about to board the plane that I had not told my wife that everything was uncertain, that I had done all of this without the certainty that he was going to work with me. And so I called her, and I felt like I needed to tell her the truth. And that was a bad idea. She was so mad. She was so mad. And so I flew down there, and on day one, I visited Mike, and Mike said, "This is all great, but I need to think about it." And so I went home that night just feeling like a complete failure, feeling like this was it, right? I needed to make this work. In fact, I wrote myself a little letter. I called it the Hail Mary Pass. I needed to make this work, right? Mm-hmm. And so the next day I had a flight that left at 2:00, and I was packing my bags, getting ready to go to the airport. Unsuccessful, failure. And I thought, you know what? I've got like 4 hours before my flight leaves. And so I'm going to call Mike back. What do I got to lose? I got nothing to lose. What I hear? No. You know what I mean? So I called Mike back. He says, "Why don't you come back in? Let's talk some more." And I'm like, okay, sounds good. So I went back out there. We talked a little bit more, and he signed on the dotted line. Called my wife up, and she was relieved and apologetic, which I appreciate. Have a little faith in me. Come on, let's go. Let's go. And it's a lot of little miracles like that over the years. A lot of little miracles like that over the years that have put Power Slaying Pros where it's at. A lot of tender mercies, if you will.
And again, you were faced with that situation, and like you said, what was he going to say? No. And you came out on the other side, and you were able to take that initial concept of, what it was back then to be able to evolve over the course of the years. And then as you're evolving and as Power Selling Pros is coming about, what are some of the common challenges that you see that companies are constantly facing?
I would say that the challenges are pretty darn similar. And the cool thing about the Pattern for Excellence is that it builds in a process of taking care of other people, because that's the whole point. Zig Ziglar said it best: in order to get what you want, you've got to help enough people get what they want. So whenever a company is down, what are they down on? Well, they're down on customers, they're down on calls, they're down on something, right? And they've got to figure out a way to get themselves out. Well, it's crazy how that obstacle right there becomes the way. And not just the way for that company, but for the way for that individual to get out of their little, pity party. They're, "Oh, woe is me, life sucks, this is awful," right? And it's in that, let's call it a Rocky Balboa moment, where you've got to go for it, right? You've got to train hard. You've got to make something happen. And that way, when you do it, it becomes worth something. Like, holy crap, we did it. You know what I mean? So I would say that when we start working with CSRs, it's usually because a business owner walked by the CSR department and they're going, "Holy cow, I can't believe what I just heard." Right? Or they decide, and this is always a bad idea, they decide that while they're listening to phone calls on the weekend, you should never listen to phone calls on the weekend. It's going to ruin your weekend. Right? You shouldn't listen to them on Monday, because that's not a way to start the week. You shouldn't listen to them at the end of the week, because that's not a way to end just have somebody else do it, right? Hire somebody else to listen to those phone calls. But usually the reason why we're hired is because CSRs aren't doing well, right? Well, then we come in as a punishment right? CSRs aren't doing well, and they're like, oh, great, we have to have training now and coaching one-on-one. We have to listen to our own phone calls because we're not doing a good job. And so they feel like, okay, all we have to do is start doing a good job, and then we don't have to get punished anymore by power selling pros. And so we come in, right? And the very first thing we need to do is change that mindset. Right. In fact, we talk to the business owner. We say, hey, Mr. Business Owner, will you please tell them this is not a punishment? Okay. This is not a punishment. The truth is that you've been giving all this attention to every other department inside your organization, and that you've neglected your CSR department, and you're not giving them the same attention as you've given everybody else. Now, you know it's true because every time you have a technician meeting, guess who gets second choice on the pickings of the bagels or the donuts? Right? After the technicians have their meeting, or the comfort advisors have their meeting, or the managers have their meeting, and you've all had your bagels, right? The bagels of your choice, the cream cheese flavor of your choice. And then the CSRs come in like little rodents afterwards, and they pick what's left over. How does that make them feel? It's not okay. So we need to change the culture. And the way that we do that is we have owners begin to do this as well as CSRs. Now, what is this? Okay, well, it's 8 principles that include positivity. Why? Because positivity attracts people. It includes confidence, right? Why? Because preparation inspires confidence, right? It includes listening, understanding invites connection, caring, saying yes, asking the right questions, creating value, and being grateful. Okay, you master these principles, you're going to create a wow experience. Now, the business owner, if he can put this inside his culture, he's going to help every one of his customers, who are his employees, become a wow customer, a customer that is completely committed and loyal to the organization. So if you want your CSRs to take great care of the customer using these principles, well, then you need to take great care of them. So the very first thing we do is we help the business owner understand that we're not just going to come in and give your CSRs a set of tools to book calls. No. We've got to change the culture inside your organization to the point where the CSR feels so valued, right? They feel like they belong in such a way that they are autonomously motivated, right? They are independently motivated to perform at extremely high level. And this is how you do it. So we get them to realize, okay, guys, I haven't been giving you the attention that you deserve. So this is not a punishment. Okay, this is me trying to make right where I went wrong. You need someone to turn to. You need someone to sit with you, listen to your phone calls, ask you what you heard, and let's begin to develop your ability in such a way that not only are you booking calls, but you are wowing the customer. When you hang up the phone, that customer isn't calling anybody else. You are 911. There's no 912. And you're also moving club memberships, and we're going to compensate you to move club memberships. You're simply going to say, Mr. Jones, I'm looking at your notes. I noticed that you still don't have a membership with us. I'm wondering why not. And then we get them talking about it. Okay, so once we begin to do that, well, now we've got a long-term relationship with the business owner. Long-term relationship where on a regular basis, we're seeing things like, I don't know if you can see this or not, but this is a cubicle of a CSR where she is putting all kinds of power selling press. You can see the pattern for excellence there on the side of that picture, right? She's got all kinds of power selling pros type stuff on there. And the owner's saying, these girls are taking this very seriously. I love it. Well, yeah. Yeah. And do you know why they're taking it seriously? Because the owner's taking it seriously. Okay. Look at this picture. You can see right there, they've got pattern for excellence everywhere. Everywhere. They're living it. They're breathing it, right? It's a part of their culture now. So that's our goal. Now, how do we get business owners to work with us in the first place? Well, we help them see that when they use this process, now look at this right here. Okay. So we're listen, care, say yes, ask when. Very simple process. Okay. Customer has an emotional need in the beginning of a phone call. Now, if you can take care of those emotional needs, the call is going to be very easy. All right. If you don't take care of those emotional needs first, it's not going to be a very easy call. And that call is probably going to take longer than it needs to take. All right. So how do you listen, care, reassure, and ask when at the beginning of a phone call? Simple. Customer gets on the phone. They say, hey, I'm looking for a ballpark price. Great. Tell me more about your situation. What's going on? Well, I've got this air conditioner. It's blowing hot air. Oh my gosh, it's terrible. How long has it been doing that? Oh, last couple of days. Well, look, we can totally help you with that. When would you like us out? Oh, this afternoon would be good. What just happened there? So I'm teaching them that by showing the customer that you're listening, tell me more, and that you care. Oh, that's not good. And then reassuring them that they've called the right place. We could totally help you with that. And then simply asking, when would you like us to come out? Simply, we get the answer we want, which is this afternoon. All right. Now, how does that work? Because some people, when they go, holy cow, how is that even possible that it could work that easily? Well, it's emotional. Okay. I love asking everybody in a room. Say I've got in a room full of people. I say, you guys, what is the most sensible, logical decision in a car buying situation? Guess what everybody says? Honda, right? Honda Civic, Toyota Camry. Everybody says that's the most sensible car. Crazy thing. Only 2 people in the room have that car. Why? Because the buying process is emotional. It's not logical. So your objective is to tap into their emotions by listening, by caring, by reassuring, so that you can help them take their logic and go where their emotion is going. If that makes any sense at all. Okay. So you want to listen, care, reassure in the beginning of that phone call. Now, when we're first working with a contractor and they're thinking about using our services, we show them how easy it is to book calls using this process. So their end goal is to fix what's going on inside their CSR department. Whereas our job, once we get in there, is to fix what's going on inside their company. We want to change the culture, and we do that through the CSR department. This is our vehicle for helping the business owner see that no. It's not just about your CSRs. Okay, you're here because you neglected them. Okay, you didn't give them the attention that they needed. And that's a symptom of a much bigger issue that's going on. We want to make sure that you're actually using these principles, that you're positive, that you're confident, that you're well prepared, that you're showing them that you're listening to them, that you care about them, and reassuring them that they belong and they're in the right place and that they're in the right seat and that they can make the biggest impact inside the organization, staying right there in that seat. And then asking the right questions, creating value for them and being grateful. Right now, how do we create value for them? Right now, in the industry, we leave it to technicians to sell service agreements. Why? Technician goes in, fixes the problem, and then they try and sell a service, an ongoing service, after the problem itself is fixed. Well, why would you do that? The best time to sell a service agreement is while they're still feeling the emotional angst of the system going down. So why would you fix it, get rid of the emotional angst, and then say, hey, let's provide an ongoing service? What do you think? Well, no. It worked fine for 5 years. It should probably work fine for another 5 years, right? It's already fixed. The emotional angst is gone. So over the phone, they're still dealing with that emotional angst. It's not working. It's broken. It's I don't know how I'm going to pay for this, and so on and so forth. So if I'm a great CSR, I'm going to book that call. I'm going to wow that customer. I'm going to make sure I'm the only one going out. And at the end of that phone call, I'm simply saying, Mr. Jones, I'm looking at your notes. I noticed you don't have a membership with us. I'm wondering why not. Well, what is it? Well, it prevents things like this, the thing that you're dealing with right now, from happening. Now, the way that we do that is we go out in the spring, we go out in the fall, and make sure it's running at peak efficiency before it breaks down. Now, if you want it, I can get you going on it right now. Now, let's say I take 30 phone calls a day. I take 30 phone calls a day. And say 20 of those 30 calls say, no, I'm good. And that's fine. Don't push it. But say the other 10 out of the 30 say, well, what is it? And out of those 10 who say, what is it? You get at least 2 that say, I'm in, let's do it. That means you get 2 a day. And let's say we spend or we invest in our CSR and we give them $10 a service agreement. So now they just made $20 today. What if they do 2 for 5 days straight? How much money do we make? 20 times 5, it's $100. So an extra $100 a week, times that by 50, because they don't work 52 weeks, right? Chances are they take a week off here and there. There's times when they're off, right? They don't work for 52 weeks straight. So let's just say 50. So 50 times 10, well, that's $5,000. What would a CSR do with an extra $5,000? a lot of things. And now they've become more self-reliant. Now they have control over their own income. And now they're motivated to stay in that seat because they can make their own money. And then they start using this thing perpetually because they realize that this is how I make more membership sales. So then you set a goal for every one of your CSRs to do at least 2 a day. And then watch what happens. Magic.
And changing that mindset, like you said, is so important. Being able to tie into the emotional feeling of the pain point, right? If I'm a buyer, which I have been, right? And I've needed a solution, I needed a problem fixed. I'm feeling most emotional going through the beginning phases of the process, all the way until they come out and reach my residence. If they
Yeah.
say, hey, look, we can offer you this plan, this agreement to make sure that you're not interrupted by this, we can come out right away. I'm going to say yes, because I don't want to experience this again. Right? I
Yes.
want to be able to just, okay, and it's already handled and it's already taken care of. You ask me afterwards, I'm feeling good. I can go back to my normal everyday. Like,
Yeah.
it starts to leave my mind. So, like you said, changing that mindset, being able to get your team to be able to buy in, and it starts with the owner. I've seen it before where the owner does something, he's not in tune, he's not setting the example, and then they're wondering, like, why is this broken over here? What's going on with our sales? What's going on with our processes? And like, you brought a really good point earlier. Don't listen to those calls over the weekend. I've listened to calls and they are bad, really egregious at times, where someone called and you can hear the strain in their voice of, I have an emergency. And the person is like, yeah, so what are we getting for lunch? Did you want a turkey club? And meanwhile, the customer is waiting to, hello, is this so? And it just provides a bad customer service experience.
100%. But when a CSR realizes that their income can be impacted in a positive way by taking phenomenal care, and here's the pathway, here's how you do it, right? Here's how you can control your own income. Boy, it changes everything. Changes everything for them, and it changes everything for the business owner. You've essentially taken your call center and you've turned it into a profit center. Now, if a technician is frustrated or doesn't like the idea, well, Mr. Technician, we're giving you 2 opportunities to go into the customer's home on a regular basis every year, perhaps more based on the club membership. And we know that homeowners will only bear so many items, right? In other words, well, we can get you on the service agreement, we can get you on this, we can get you on that, we can get you on this. Well, if they say yes to the service agreement, they may say no to everything else because they've already said yes to the service agreement. They're like, that's enough, that's enough. Well, why don't we just get that out of the way so that we can begin to focus in on zoning in the home? We can begin to focus in on air purification products and services. We can begin to focus in on perhaps other things like water heaters and electrical work and so on and so forth. Let's get that service agreement out of the way. We've agreed to serve them over a long period of time. Mission accomplished. Let the CSR do that. Okay, let's not trip over the club membership. Come on, you guys. Let's sell some real things to the homeowner. So, in my opinion, you want to get that out of the way. You want that done. Customer calls in, your goal is to get them for life. Let the CSR do that. That's easy. That way the technician can come in every 6 months and if he keeps good notes, hey, 6 months ago we talked about this. It may not have been a good time at that moment. 6 months later, boy, everything changes in 6 months. Your income, your prospects, your fortune, everything changes in 6 months.
Those things, like you said, they change on a constant basis, right? But good notes, right? Being able to be detailed about what you have written down is going to be able to help you be effective. And people appreciate being able to have the attention put on them, so where they don't have to tell you about the experience or what they went through or any details. You could just say, oh, remember when we talked about that the last time? That makes a person feel good, right? Comfortable. You're developing that relationship. Why? Because you've listened, right? You've taken notes. Some people are just good at remembering, some people are not, right? So you have to jot those things down.
Yeah. No means no in the moment. It doesn't mean no forever. Speaking of which, um, for years, our clients have been asking us, can you please teach the pattern for excellence to our technicians like you have been for our CSRs? And back in 2022, I started doing ride-alongs with technicians. And all we focused in on, I'm not a technician, all we focused in on was soft skills. And we took a company, just for example, the only plumbing, and they were doing about $500,000 a month in revenue. And we got them up to 700,000 a month within about 90 days, just by focusing in on their soft skills. And there's a few really cool things I learned along the way. Say, for example, if you get in front of a group of technicians and you ask, guys, how do you get kissed on the first date? It's amazing. It doesn't matter how early it is when you ask this question, right? It doesn't matter. They don't need coffee anymore because now they're about to learn something. You know what I mean? They're sitting up in their chairs like, holy crap, I'm about to learn something. You know, even if they're married, they haven't been kissed in weeks, you know. And so I simply say, look, you guys, your goal is to create an environment of safety. Because guess what? If you don't feel safe, right? If the homeowner doesn't feel safe, if your date doesn't feel safe, you're not going to get kissed. Okay. If they don't feel comfortable, guess what? You're not going to get kissed. And if they're not having just a little bit of fun, chances are they're not getting kissed. So you've got to create that environment, safety, comfort, and fun, in order to have a very good chance of getting kissed. Well, the same is true with a homeowner. In fact, a technician will say, so you want us to kiss our customers? No, I don't. But I do want you to create an environment of safety, comfort, and fun inside that home, because in that environment, you can get curious about what's going on inside the customer's home to the point where you're looking at everything other than the thing you were called out to do. Right? Chances are you're going to look at the thing you've been called out to do, but because that environment is there, the customer doesn't care. Right? You're curious. You're providing options based on your curiosity, based on what you find, and you simply get to yes or no. At this point, a technician goes, wait a minute, no selling? Did I say anything about selling? Did you say anything about selling? No, nobody said anything about selling. All we're talking about here is doing a good job. Now, what's amazing about this precedent is the one thing we haven't been able to do over the last year or so, as we begin to work with technicians, is gosh, I wish you could do for our technicians what you've been doing for our CSRs. Well, there's this amazing technology that's coming out this year called Rilla. And Rilla records the technician's phone calls. And so now we have an army of call monitors that's been listening to calls for over 1,000 CSRs that can now begin to listen to technicians, monitor those calls, save certain calls for coaching purposes. And now we have technician coaches that can create short 7-minute videos, send them out to the technician based on their own calls, based on their own performance. And those technicians can listen to those short videos, personalized videos, on an online platform called Tech Talks that we're in the process of developing right now, and get that feedback as quickly as possible. So in between calls, they could be listening to those videos personalized just for them, based on their performance. So now we're beginning to do the same thing for technicians that we've been doing for the last 15 years with CSRs. And that is an exciting precedent.
And that's excellent to be able to have that dual offering, dual value proposition, right? I think it's important for not only CSRs, but for technicians too as well. To be able to get that training, get that coaching, to be able to feel good about things, right? Be able to feel good about their day-to-day workflow, things that they're doing, to be able to enhance that quality will make them feel better and increase their performance.
Right. That's right. Now, there's a lot of trainings out there, and that's why we focus more on being a coaching company. We're a coaching company, and the way that we go about training people is very, very different. We do it based on their performance, right? We're not a fly-by-night. Here's a 3-day training. Here's a 4-day training, and then never see you again. We set the expectation for what we're looking to see. And then after that, we begin to monitor your calls, determine whether or not you're following what we taught, the expectation that we set. And then we provide feedback along the way. And whenever you get off track, we're providing feedback. Whenever you're on track, we're providing accolades and saying, keep up the good work, right? All those things they need from an emotional standpoint. But it is an ongoing process as opposed to a one-time process.
No, I agree. It's not just a fly-by-night thing. It's like an ongoing process. And that in itself is just 1,000%, valuable to an organization, a business looking to change things internally, to be able to change the culture, to be able to get more positive results and performance out of their team members, and really, just get more in tune about the vision of what the company wants to accomplish. And by getting everybody on board and making everybody feel important, it's worth its weight in gold, right? Because you have, like you said, you have those silos, and this department goes first, this department goes second, and then this department is overlooked. We get the scraps, and it's changing that. So that's a beautiful thing. And so we like to really be able to just wrapping up, what's next for Power Selling Pros? Is there any initiatives, things you got going on this year that you want to share with the audience?
So the technician emphasis is definitely the thing that we're very, very excited about. We love our CSRs. It's our bread and butter. It's what we do. It's what we've been doing for 15 years. But now that this technology at Rilla has given us the opportunity to monitor technician calls and provide coaching on a regular basis to the technicians, that more than anything else is what we're excited about. So if there are any listeners out there that want to be part of the beta test for techs, we're right in the middle of it. So feel free to go to powersellingpros.com and click on the link for a demo, and we can take you through that. And for those who feel like, you know what, I need to change the culture inside my CSR department, same thing. Go to powersellingpros.com, click on the demo link, and schedule a demo with us, and we'll get going.
All right, excellent. Well, we appreciate it, and we want to have you back on again. And hopefully the next episode, when you're back on, we can dig into a little bit more about that technician part and see how that evolved.
Sounds great. I appreciate it, David.
All right. Thanks, everyone, for listening to this episode. Don't forget to follow and leave your comments. Until next time.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Blueprint Boost for Contractors. We hope you found today's insights and strategies valuable for your contracting business. If you enjoyed the episode, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and please leave us a review. Your feedback helps us bring content that truly matters.